This video is sponsored by Picnic.
Hey, what's up? Up until very recently, I have had almost no respect for teriyaki sauce. For good reason too. The stuff at the grocery store is overly sweetened, overly thickened, and has very little in common with Japanese food as I know it. But recently, I figured out how to make it at home, and it turns out that it frickin' rips. Today, I'm gonna show you how to teriyaki some salmon and then how to turn that into a delicious weeknight dinner. This is Weeknighting.
So out of the 25 to 30 minutes this recipe takes to make, just over half of that time is going to be spent passively reducing the teriyaki sauce into a glaze. To start that, I'll grab a small saucepan and into it measure 250 grams of soy sauce, 250 grams of mirin, 125 grams of dry white wine. This is a sub for the more traditional sake, which is what they would use in Japan for teriyaki, I'm told, but I don't keep sake on hand, so instead I'm keeping it classy with Bota Box Chardonnay. Behind the wine, I'll add in 15 grams of rice vinegar, 75 grams of brown sugar, 10 grams of grated fresh ginger, and 10 grams of grated fresh garlic. By the way, I grated both the ginger and the garlic on my microplane so that they would integrate with this sauce more easily. Now, I'll stir this to combine and then move the pot over to the stove and drop it down over medium-high heat. I'll let that come up to a boil, and once it's there, I'll turn the heat down to medium-low so that this doesn't boil over, and from there, I'll reduce this sauce for 15 to 20 minutes or until it's nice and thick. In the meantime, I'll get my carbs for this dish set up. For that, I'll grab my rice cooker and into the bowl of that measure 400 grams of water, 300 grams of medium grain rice, and 7 grams of salt. And if you're thinking, hey Bri, you didn't rinse that rice. Well, this particular medium grain rice is both pre-washed and enriched. Rinsing it would remove the minerals and washing it would be redundant. Plus, I eat medium grain rice specifically because it's starchy, and I want the rice to clump together slightly so that it's easier and more fun to eat. While that rice cooks, let's get some vegetables cut up. For this dish, I've chosen 2 quick cooking but also nutritious and delicious vegetables, the first of which is broccolini. I've got 6 ounces of it here, and I'm lining up the stems like so, and then I'm going to come back and cut those stems off, leaving me with about 3-inch florets. Next, I'll set the florets aside and then cut the stems into coins. Breaking down the broccolini into its floret and stem components like this ensures that they both get cooked in the same amount of time. I'll cut down until the stem feels woody, and then I'll discard the rest. Up next is spinach. I've got a bundle of whole leaf spinach here, or I guess you could call it grown-up spinach because it's not baby. I don't really know what you call this stuff, but baby spinach tends to get a little bit mushy when it's cooked, and it's better in a salad than in a saute pan, so I prefer to buy these larger leaves. As you can see, I cut off the stemmy end here, and then I opened them up to see how dirty they are. These larger leaves tend to be a little bit sandy, so I'm going to pop them into a salad spinner, give them a quick rinse, and then a quick spin to dry them off. And there we go. Now we've got the vegetables prepped out for this dish. Up next, let's talk about the salmon part of this salmon teriyaki. I'm starting with a 1-pound fillet of skin-on Atlantic salmon. This fish is from Norway, and as far as farmed salmon goes, it's some of the better quality stuff available. I tend to use frozen wild salmon mostly at home because it has a ton more omega-3s in it than farmed, but wild salmon is more expensive, and I figured that most of you guys would have easier access to farmed. To clean this up, I'm going to use my boning knife now to zip off that fatty stuff from the top of the fillet. That's called dorsal fat, I think, and it's a little bit overly fishy, so I tend to get rid of it. Next, I'll remove that little bit of silver skin on the belly of the fillet. I'll cut that on an angle though to keep as much of the flesh underneath intact as possible, and once I've got that little bit zipped off, I'll come back and cut this fillet into 2 equal size pieces. And there we go. Now I've got 2 roughly 7-ounce pieces of fish. For this dish though, I am going to be removing the skin, and I think for a beginner fish cutter, especially at home, I think it's a lot easier to remove the skin off of the portion as opposed to the whole fillet. So with the portion skin side down, I'm going to come back with my fillet knife as parallel to the cutting board as possible and make my first cut right at the skin line. As I cut, I'm pressing firmly with my non-knife hand to keep the skin as flat as possible against the board. And there we go. Now we've got 2 skinless portions that are about 6 to 7 ounces a piece, but before I cook them, I'm going to hit both sides with some salt. The teriyaki is going to be pretty salt forward overall from that 250 grams of soy sauce, but we still need some salt right on the flesh. Speaking of the teriyaki, let's check back on that. It's been about 20 minutes so far, and the sauce has reduced by about 5 to 6 times. The sugar inside has really thickened it up, and that's what's causing such large bubbles. The best way for me to know if this sauce is thick enough is to measure how much is left. There should be somewhere in between 1.5 to 2 cups, and visually it should look like a freshly poured pint of Guinness. Viscosity wise, I'm looking for something that's a little bit thicker than a sauce, but thinner than a glaze. Now, before I cook this fish, I want to quickly thank the sponsor of this video, Picnic. I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely one of those people that gets itchy red eyes and sneezes all the time in the spring. I guess I've been in denial about it for most of my life, but I think I can finally admit that I have seasonal allergies. Since I don't know anything about over-the-counter medications, I usually just ask Lauren what medicine I should take, but Picnic takes all the guesswork out of it and makes it a lot easier when I'm experiencing symptoms. The way it works is really simple too. You take their quiz to find a personalized allergy treatment plan, and then you get that plan including prescription and over-the-counter medications delivered to your door. To get my plan, I took their online quiz made by expert allergists. The questions are all designed to suggest the best treatment plan based on my symptoms, severity, and treatment history. From there, I got all my medication recommendations, including a prescription, which just required a quick virtual consultation with a doctor. If I have any questions from there, my treatment also includes unlimited access to follow-ups. So to get your personalized allergy plan, use the link in my description to sign up for Picnic and get 50% off your first order plus free shipping. Just take the quiz and the promotion will automatically apply. Thank you, Picnic, for sponsoring this video. Now, to cook this salmon, I'm going to preheat a 10-inch nonstick pan over medium-high heat. Once that's hot, I'll glug in 3 tablespoons or so of a high smoke point neutral oil. In this case, I'm using light olive. Once that's shimmering, I'll add in my salmon with the skin side facing up, or like what used to be the skin side. Now, pretty much any time I sear something where the goal is good color and crust formation, I like to press the meat or fish into the pan for the first 15 to 20 seconds of cooking to ensure that as much of the flesh is in contact with the pan as possible. After that, the proteins relax and I can let go. After 3 to 4 minutes over medium-high heat, this fish should have developed a nice brown crust on the pan side and should be visibly transitioned to a cooked opacity most of the way up the side. These are looking really good, so I'll come back and flip them over. Do that away from yourself, by the way. That avoids any weird splashing of oil on your feet. And now to make sure this doesn't dry out or overcook on the backside, I'll reduce my heat to medium-low and let these coast for another minute or so. After 4 to 5 minutes of sauteing, these are looking really good and crispy, so I'm going to move them onto a plate or a sheet tray to drain and rest. The main thing that I like about farmed salmon actually over wild is how much better it takes a sear. The high fat content in farmed salmon keeps it from drying out and allows it to get a much deeper golden brown crust. By the way, don't be shy about using a thermometer to check doneness here, especially if you're new to cooking fish. I think 125, 130F is a good place to shoot for. Now, while these rest, I'm going to hit them with the first of 2 glazings of the teriyaki sauce. You can see that texturally the teriyaki is thick but not sticky, and it grips the fish perfectly. You could bake this fish if you're not that confident with sauteing. Just be prepared for it to not really be as perfectly glazed because it doesn't have that crust to grab onto the sauce. The pan's back on medium heat now, and I'll use a paper towel to wipe out all the fishy oil from before. Next, a good long squiz of olive oil, and then in goes my chopped broccolini. A strong pinch of salt to follow, and then a few tosses to get things coated with the oil. Now, I'll give this broccoli 2 to 3 minutes over medium-high heat to get it charred on the outside and just softened. The good thing about broccolini is that texturally it's great at pretty much anywhere on the spectrum from raw to cooked. This stuff has just a touch of crunch on it at this point, so I think it's time to add in 3 to 4 cloves of minced garlic. I'll stir that in to combine and keep an eye on the heat now because this garlic will definitely burn quickly if we don't keep it moving. Next, in goes my spinach. Once destemmed and washed, that's about 3 big handfuls, and from here I'll wilt the spinach down for about another minute or so. Don't cook it too far because it'll start to get slimy. Now, after about 60 seconds, this is looking pretty good, so I'll add a small pinch of salt to make sure everything is seasoned properly, and then in goes 3 large pinches of sesame seeds. I'll toss those to get them fried up and toasty and let them cook for about 15 seconds or so, and then in goes a few strong pinches of thinly sliced scallions. I'll give those a quick stir to combine, and that's pretty much it. You definitely don't want to cook this vegetable set too far as it will lose its fresh flavors and textures and be kind of mushy. Again, I think 2 to 3 minutes on the broccolini and maybe 1 more minute on the spinach is more than enough to get things tender. Now, the last step here is to give my fish a secondary glaze with the teriyaki. As you can see, round 1 of sauce basically soaked right into the crust, and there's no way that's not going to be dope to eat, but let's double down on that. By the way, my teriyaki is still warm here, so if the fish lost a little bit of heat while we cook the vegetables, this should help warm them back up. And wow, look at this. It's so glossy looking. It reminds me of unagi at a sushi restaurant, actually, or like seafood yakitori. To plate this up, I'll drop a few spoonfuls of that sticky medium grain rice that we cooked before, then my veggies, then my seared and glazed teriyaki salmon. To finish this thing, I'll put a little bit more teriyaki on top of everything so that I can get some in the rice and in the vegetables. And there we go. This dish is so craveable, you guys, and it's really easy to make. I think anyone with 30 minutes and even a casual interest in Japanese flavors are going to be putting this in their rotation. I hope you try it soon. Let's eat this thing.